Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Maple Grove Scripture Reading Podcast. There is an order of things in this final chapter that's easy to miss if you're moving along quickly. The restoration of Job doesn't start with God saying, "Here are your things back." It starts with the sacrifice that the friends bring that we talked about yesterday. Then Job prays for the friends, and then the restoration comes. And I think that order matters. Something has to happen relationally before the rest can follow. So last time we were in verses 7 through 9 in chapter 42. God turned on the three friends, and he rebuked them. They had not spoken the truth about him. He commanded them to bring a costly sacrifice and go to Job, and told them that Job would pray for them and that he would accept Job's prayer. And they did exactly what God commanded. And the Lord accepted Job's prayer. Today we're going to finish up the book of Job, verses 10 through 17. And it is the last passage in the book. Let me read through it. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. All his brothers and sisters and everyone who had known him before came and ate with him in his house. They comforted and consoled him over all the trouble the Lord had brought on him, and each one gave him a piece of silver and a gold ring. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former part. He had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. And he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. The first daughter he named Jemima, the second Keziah, and the third Keren-Happuch. Nowhere in all the land were there found women as beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father granted them an inheritance along with their brothers. After this, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their children to the 4th generation, and so Job died, an old man and full of years. So that first line has the timing. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes. So it wasn't before, it was after. The King James Version translates the Hebrew a little bit more literally, where it says, the Lord turned the captivity of Job. It wasn't the poverty of Job, it wasn't the sickness of Job, but the captivity. There was something holding Job that went deeper than his material losses, and whatever it was, it broke when he prayed for the men who had wronged him. Praying for enemies, that's not just a New Testament invention. Job does it here, before the cross, before the Sermon on the Mount, and he has every reason not to. These men accused him for all of those chapters. They made his suffering worse. They sat across from him in his most broken moments and told him he was getting what he deserved. And now he prays for them, and the Lord accepts his prayer, and the captivity turns. It's something in there for anybody who's been wronged and found themselves waiting for restoration that hasn't come. The sequence here is not incidental. Pray for the ones who hurt you, and something opens. And then there's the restoration himself. The Lord gave him twice as much as he had before. So the chapter does give us the numbers, right? He had 14,000 sheep where he had 7. He has 6,000 camels now where he had 3,000 before, 1,000 yoke of oxen where he had 500, 1,000 donkeys where he had 500. Everything doubled. It was exact, doubled. And his children, he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. So he had 7 sons, 3 daughters, same numbers as the beginning. Chapter 1 said he had 7 sons and 3 daughters too. Now, why isn't this doubled? Why not 14 sons and 6 daughters? Well, it's because the first 10 children are not being replaced. Like, they're still his. Death isn't the last word on who belongs to him. The book doesn't explain it that way, but the arithmetic makes the point quietly. You don't double the number of children because the ones who died didn't stop being his children. He has 10, and now he has 10 more. So he's richer in children than the number suggests. And then we get the names. The daughters get named, but the sons don't. The text names each daughter. You had Jemima, which means turtle dove or day bright. Keziah, which is cinnamon, a fragrant spice, right? And then you have Keren-Happuch. I think I'm saying that right. Probably not, but it's Keren Happuch. So that's what I'm going with, Karen Happuch. And that means a jar of eye paint or a vessel of beauty. And these are vivid names that point toward life and light and fragrance. Now, compare this to the cautious patriarch of chapter 1, who got up very early in the morning and offered burnt offerings for his children just in case they had sinned in their hearts. That man had his eyes trained on the danger. This man names his daughters after beauty and light and spice. Job's been changed. And then there's this. Their father granted them an inheritance along with their brothers, and that was unheard of in the ancient world. Daughters didn't receive inheritance alongside sons. Property passed through the male line. What Job does here is super countercultural in the very deepest sense. He gives his daughters what only sons received. Now, whether this is gratitude or love or a changed understanding of how to hold what God gives, the text doesn't give us that. But he does it anyway. It says all his brothers and sisters and everyone who had known him before came and ate with him in his house. Now remember, Job has been pretty isolated, right? Like Job 19:13 describes it. His brothers had distanced themselves. His acquaintances had become strangers. He sat alone in the ash heap while the people who should have been nearest to him stayed away. And now they come back, they eat in his house, and they comfort him. And notice, they say, they comforted and consoled him over all the trouble the Lord had brought on him. So the comfort comes after the restoration, after the doubled wealth, after the new children, after God's verdict in his favor. And they still need to comfort him because the losses were real. Getting more doesn't erase what was lost. Like you can hold both things. You can have the grief of what was taken and also the gratitude for what was given back. The people who came to eat with Job know enough to sit with him in both of those. It continues. It says, after this, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their children to the fourth generation. And so Job died an old man and full of years. 140 years, 4 generations of descendants, full of years. The Hebrew behind that phrase carries the sense of satisfaction. Not a man who was done with life, not a man who was bitter and ready to go, but a man who had lived until he was full, who had seen enough, who was satisfied. The book of Job ends without explaining why any of this happened. Job never learns about the adversary. He never learns about the wager. He never learns that what he endured was allowed in order to answer a question about whether a man can fear God without getting anything in return. He dies not knowing. But what he knows instead is this. God spoke to him from the whirlwind. God called him, my servant Job, 4 times in front of the friends who accused him. God accepted his prayer. His life was given back. It was fuller than it was before. And he was full of years. And, that has to be enough, really. And for Job, it was. And that finishes the book. But I want to take a few more days next week to kind of step back and look at a few different things. So next time I want to just step back and look at the long view, the whole shape of the story from chapter 1 to chapter 42, just kind of recap everything because we're on episode 120 right now. If you're listening to this live, we're in the middle of June, and we've been at this since the beginning of the year. So it's been a long time since we've been in Job, and there's a lot of detail that we've gone through. And so I think it'll be good to kind of step back and take that bird's eye view to see the whole story again. All right, with that, I do hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you again next time. God bless.